Today, you guys chose for me to channel Leonardo da Vinci, and I've got my partner in crime, Kerry Walker.
Hi, guys.
Who's gonna do all the questions, and she's come up with some questions of her own that she's given it some good thought. So I'm pretty curious to see what the questions.
I've had a little bit of time, so yes, this is going to be fun. Well, should we just launch in? Hello, Mr. Da Vinci.
He's saying hello. His energy right now. Okay, and I told this to Tiffany already, but when I connect to him, his energy feels so much like yours.
Like mine?
Yes.
What a compliment, I think. Poor guy.
See, when I connect to you, and this is a very positive way, your mind doesn't stop. There is a constant boom, 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 boom. Intuitions coming in, messages coming in, energies coming in, and it's kind of like you're hopping around. Your energy is never standing still. That's what I feel when I connect to him as well. It's almost like his mind never shut up and it never stopped. It was constant insights and intuitions and messages and things like that. So I kind of feel like you guys are very similar,
Squirrel,
vibrational wise.
Oh, this is going to be interesting then. Talk about ADD. Well, I'm honored. I mean, I am absolutely honored that you said that, and I can imagine. He is just the fact that he is still being spoken about, and he is still just so relevant. Thousands of years later is incredible to me. I mean, maybe it's not thousands of years. I have no concept of time. Not thousands of years, but a lot of years, decade, or you know what I'm trying to say. But he is, I mean, even I was online, and my children sometimes hop onto my YouTube channel, the Joyride Show's channel, which it's like, please don't look up weird stuff. I don't know what all folks can see out there. But there was a cartoon, I don't know if you know it, Futurama, and it was about him, and they go back and they meet him, and they put together all of his, all of this dark society stuff. Not dark, but it's like there's this room and there are all these people that anyway, it was really cool. I mean, that's in just pop culture. It's amazing. Yeah. It is truly amazing. So
I think, and I'm a bit nervous doing this interview because he's such, I mean, people have created this, I don't know, this legend around him, and there's so many questions that people don't know, and so many stories that have been kind of launched into the world that kind of had this ripple effect. One story led to another story, led to another story. Right. So I'm a little nervous because, what really did happen. I mean, he was just a man, but the way that the world looks at him now, it's almost like he's this godlike figure that had these incredible insights and ideas and inspirational constructions that he built. And so, yeah, I'm really curious to see what all's going to come out.
Well, but that's what I love, though, because I think that to have a peek inside that mind and have someone that is so big and has had such an impact not only on the Western world, but the world in general throughout history, that's incredible. And I'm sure he sat in his little office and he did his thing and had no idea the far-reaching effect over time that he had. Okay, so that brings me to my first question. So my youngest child, Miles, he asked me, he said, please ask Mr. Da Vinci if he time traveled. He's 9.
He's laughing. He's saying, I love how creative his mind is. It's going to take him far in this world. So just so you know, he says, did I time travel? He says, we all do. Yeah. So yes and no, not in the way that people believe that I did. People think that I truly had a gift or an ability to place my mind and see the future. Not in that sense. However, every time an idea or a creative um, insight occurs within a human brain, that inspiration comes from a time somewhere in the universe, and is sent and passed through you and by you by a source. So, did I get inspiration from source, from the universe? Absolutely, we all do. Every minute of every day, every thought you ever experience is an inspiration from some life, from some idea that's floating in the universe, from energies that are floating around. But did I literally take my body and my mind into another time zone, go visit there and come back? No, not in that way.
Okay, he'll be thrilled to know that. And you know what I just saw as you were speaking? I saw these timelines, and that you accessed, and that brains. I think what made it so different is that you had the ability, and I want to ask you about that. You had the ability to access these where normally an invention, it has its base, and then someone says, oh, based on that I can do this, and then based on that we can do this, and then it just sort of grows. You had the ability to bypass, it seems, all of those steps, and it's like you like a fisherman, you cast your line out, and you were able to get to the end of the line and bypass those steps. And that's why things like aviation, I mean, that's why things were so far beyond what society, we think, maybe it wasn't actually that way, but so far beyond what you had access to at that point. Does that make, I don't know if that question made sense.
He says, yes, in a way, it is correct what you were saying. He's saying, let me try and explain the brilliancy of my brain. He says, because, everybody's brain is brilliant. We just don't always know it. We're just not always aware of it. But you have to understand that when I grew up, I was unwanted. And I grew up in a family where making myself invisible was a requirement. So they would feed me, but that was about it. They would keep me alive, but there was not a lot of interaction. There was not a lot of love. I did not feel like I was part of a family. So I started to look outside of myself for that family. And Mother Nature became my family. And I wasn't influenced so much by the human way of living and perceiving the reality around me. I created my own world with the connection to the universe around me. And that was always one day at a time. That was very a mindful existence for me, but a very happy existence, because I felt connected to source, and I felt connected to everything that was around me in my environment. Does that kind of make sense? He says. So I grew up very introvert, but still extremely connected to the energies around me.
Right.
And my brain was a little bit different than other people's brains. For example, I was a visual thinker, meaning that if I saw a bird, I could see in front of me the measurements, how it was flying, what it was doing. It's kind of hard to explain, he says, but a lot of people with autism or ADHD have that. They can see how everything will work, and how, like, for instance, I could already calculate in my mind. I could see where the bird was going to fly towards, if it was going to go down before it even did it. So because of that visual thinking, I could, in some way or form, predict futures a little bit.
It was patterns. You saw patterns.
Yeah, exactly. He says, this is how it's so hard for me to explain unless you see that. But you know how you have my journals? I know you guys have the journals, and you see how I draw everything up, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could see that in front of me. I didn't need to write it down. I could already see it. And on top of that, I had a photographic memory. So whatever I saw while I was watching it happen, I would later on write down. See, it didn't take me much effort to go from I've seen this bird, it took a flight, it went like this, the angle of his wings went that way in order to fly in that direction. I could see all the patterns in front of me, and I would take mental pictures of that. And so whenever I had the time, I would just write it all down. I would just draw it up, what I had seen. And so in regards to the inventions that a lot of people believe I received from messages from the future, from visualizing that, I have to be very clear on this, that there were some brilliant engineers that were ahead of me, that were my inspiration. So because I was not accepted, because I was considered a bastard, I never went to school, so I really read a lot of books myself. I educated myself mostly. And there were some brilliant books in there of people who invented flying machines and who invented machines to walk underwater. And I know a lot of people think that I invented that. I actually took their designs and improved it. That's what I did. I actually found inspiration in other engineers that to this day, your society still owns those copies. Okay, so those books can be looked up. And I improved them because I could see what they were creating, and I felt like I wanted to do the same thing, but I combined my visual thinking of the nature around me with these brilliant ideas that these other people had, and I made it one. I combined it, I improved it, and that's where the ideas came from. So I don't want to be a disappointment to people. I know people like to believe that I was a time traveler. In a way, I've explained that, but truly and honestly, the ideas were already created before me. The idea of flying has been in the mind of humans since the existence of humans. We have always been fascinated by flight. We've always been fascinated by fish, being under the ocean, exploring the sky. It has always been there. And all I did was take some brilliant ideas and really turned them into my own and improved them and recreated them and shared them with the world. Now, I never had the idea or the intention that even people would consider reading my stuff. I never knew that was going to happen. It was just for my apprentices. It was to pass on to the people that were fascinated by it, and I never expected it to, become this world-known phenomenon. Not the slightest. Never hit my mind, he says. But I wasn't. That's the whole thing. I wasn't preoccupied with what people thought, with ego. I had no ego. I didn't think about what it would do for people or to people. This was my way of pushing my own limits and boundaries of my own brain, of my, because when you're growing up and you're not allowed to step into your father's, souls, you're not allowed to do what your family does, and you're not allowed to go to school. You have to find a way to push yourself. You have to find a way to prove to yourself who you are and what you can do. And sometimes you get forced into that. It was not a choice for me, but it drove me to expand as a human being. I was no longer stuck in the ego sense of living an individual life, but I was totally consumed with exploring the universe, exploring humanity, exploring all the machines that work so perfectly, because I was so fascinated by the fact that nature uses mathematics and patterns to create. And I started becoming more and more obsessed with the creation process. And, when you look at the human body, over time, it is the best oiled machine there is.
Yeah.
It is perfect in every way. And I was obsessed in a way of discovering how everything works, whether that was in nature or whether that was in the human body. So, I started to study anatomy and astronomy and botany and geology and geometry and optics. I was obsessed with optics and the illusion of it, and how we can change it and how the brain processes it. So yes, I hopped from a lot of different.
No, but I would like to say that feels to me like it's very much by design, because until very recently in our historical line, we were in a caste system. You did what your father did. He did what he did. So you were born into this situation, and from what I know, you were with your mother, and then you moved in with your father. And so, but being on the outside of this paradigm and this structure, actually really served you to be free with what you thought. Yeah.
He's saying, yeah, I was here to gain wisdom and knowledge through observation, basically. That's really what I was here. And I was here to see myself. I mean, I consider myself an artistic scientist.
Oh, but that's exactly what you are. And that's so when you planned that lifetime, so if we go pre that lifetime, when you sat down and you planned that lifetime, did you plan for it to begin the way it did, in that hardship and that loneliness and isolation? Was that part of the plan in order to grow into who you needed to be?
Yes, that was part of the contract in order to lead a human life without being attached to the human condition.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Oh, see how that served you. Well, okay, that's beautiful. So, would you like to answer some questions from some of our viewers?
He's saying, I'd love to.
So, Tom Veach wanted to know if you were a clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant.
Mm-hmm. Let me just think it to you.
Was I a clairvoyant? Was I a clairmedium? I guess in a way, yes, because I did have dreams that were very vivid, especially when I was focused on something specific. Like when I was thinking about the flight, how a person could fly. I was so focused on it that I would take that into my dreams. And in my dreams, I would see possibilities on how to create it, how to make it, what to think of. But did I see your modern airplanes in my dreams? No, I did not. It was not in that way. It was really just a way of connecting to the creative source of energy, and allowing myself to be open to receive suggestions. I know that sounds a little weird, but
no, it doesn't.
He's saying, how can I explain this? Was I could I see the future in my mind? For instance, you guys sitting here today seeing this. No. However, the inspiration and the ideas that were provided to me by source always come from somewhere. They come from a creation that has happened at one moment in time.
And if there is no such thing as time, and time is the beginning, the past, yeah, so it's all there. I get that. I get that. And I think that staying open is part of it. I think if you have a preconceived notion of how things are supposed to be, again, that locks you into a box. And you were so free, I'm not sure you knew where your box was.
I had no box. I had no walls.
Yeah.
And I think when most people, they grow up in a form of society that will shape them and limit them and create these boundaries onto where we can take our bodies and our minds, onto where we can take our creativity, and we limit ourselves in our creative thinking. But the creative mind is you accessing source, and source will provide you with what you need in order to fulfill your journey. See, we can see everything we want. We can access all the possible futures that you want to access. But if it doesn't serve you purpose in this journey, then you will not receive that, because there's so much respect and unity from source, from the universe, that you will only be provided with what you can handle, with what will serve you in this journey in order for you to experience the experience that you chose to have.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And okay, next question. I'm sorry, I will take up. We won't get to any of the questions if I keep talking. Okay, Neve, Brazil. She wants to know. We're moving on to your artistic side. Who is the Mona Lisa? I'm sure you get asked that 1,000 times a day. And is it true? Because everybody wants to know. Is it true that you took that painting everywhere with you because of the romantic connection?
He's laughing. He's saying, which Mona Lisa? There are two.
Okay, how about the one? Oh, well, either one of them. And I was going to say the one in the Louvre that hangs currently in the Louvre.
He's bubbling. He's bubbling. He's saying this is going to be fun. Okay, so there are two Mona Lisas. Let me explain what happened. The first Mona Lisa was a lady called Lisa. And she was the wife of one of my father's clients. Now, I have to admit, I was never fond on painting.
Seriously?
Painting was not my thing. And I know people are going to be like, what?
No, it's your curiosity again. Yeah.
Painting was a way for me to pay for my food, was a way for me to pay and I guess what you guys would call my bills. It was a way to survive. So I wasn't keen on making this portrait in the first place because I was very busy at the time in trying to develop some of my inventions for war. But it is my father, and you just don't say no to him. He was a very strict, very controlling person. And he's saying Lisa lived in the same street as my dad. She lived a few houses down, and she married a person called Francesco, who didn't take no for an answer. And so when he went to my father couldn't say no, and so I had to make the portrait. Now, she was really sweet. She really came from he's saying from a poor background, but by marrying Francesco, she kind of moved up status. And so when I first started the painting, Francesco walked in and he didn't like the way that I had portrayed her face. So ordered me to start over. So I put the one canvas aside because he wanted everything all fresh. And I didn't throw away the canvas because they were expensive. And, I never finished half of my work. So I got sued a lot. I had to run a lot and I didn't have a lot of money. So I started over, created a new frame. They were very happy with it. I had to finish that one, did not have a choice. And that one was finished and was handed over to the family. And that one right now is in the hands of a private collector. So it is known to the world. The one that is hanging in France, he says, is the one I disregarded at first. And so what I did was I adjusted the painting because who is the Mona Lisa in France? That is a picture of my mother. Now, let me explain to you. I was taken as a baby from my mother's arms. They forced her to give up the baby, to give up me. She had no choice. She was poor. She had very low status, and that didn't fit in with the very wealthy family that my father had. So I was taken away out of her arms, and I grew up next to her because we lived not very far apart from each other. Only I was never told who my mother was. Now, I did remember there was a lady who would try and hug me, and she didn't say much, but she would try and connect with me. And when I asked my dad who it was, they would just say, oh, she's just a farm lady. Years later, I found out that she truly was my mom, that she was my mother. But because I had a photographic memory, I remembered exactly what she looked like. So I used the leftover canvas and I created my mom. And that's why I carried her with me wherever I went.
Oh, wow.
Now, 40 years later, my mom finally found me. And she stayed with me and we got to know each other. And a year later, she passed away. So we did get to spend time together, which was very special for me. But that is who the Mona Lisa is in France. It is my mother.
Wow.
Now, I portrayed her not so much as a common woman. I portrayed her more as an angel because at that time when I painted her, I didn't know whether or not she was still alive. So I created her as an angel.
That's what a son would see as a mother. That's beautiful. Oh, that's heartbreaking and beautiful.
I know.
I know. Oh, well, thank you for that. And that explains why underneath, I mean, they've studied it. There are classes on that one piece of art. And as something I read somewhere, there are only 15 surviving works of art from you, for me that is remarkable. And yes, some of them are not finished. You're an artist. That's what artists do. They don't finish, but that's what
he says. I was really bad at finishing because can you imagine when the brain never stops with new ideas and you have to work, when we created paintings, sometimes it would take up to 3 years to try and finish it. I mean, that is a long time while my brain is showing me this and showing me that. And The Last Supper never finished. Mona Lisa even was never finished. So
I not have eyebrows.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I know the painting Salvator Mundi sold for a historic $450.3 million last year. That's a lot of coin. Anyway.
Because it's crazy to think. I never expected my paintings to be considered a work of art because they were never finished. And in my eyes, they were never finished. So, it is mind blowing to me that the paintings that are, or the works that are left, I did make a lot more than what's left. But the ones that did survive are people are so fascinated with them, while all I see is the flaws.
Well, I mean, but that's human nature. I mean, that is human nature. Oh my gosh, to think that even Da Vinci has issues around that. That's funny. But it's the way you painted though, the smoky, that soft, very chalky painting style that I think you created. It is just so beautiful, and the lighting and they are beautiful. But it's interesting because I have felt, and they're parts of you. I feel that when you have a piece of art, when you're painting or you're drawing or whatever it is that you do connect to the divine, but then there is part of your soul on that canvas or in that piece of work or that sculpture. And that's what I find fascinating. But your life, you had so many independent lives in that one life. And I think that is why you were called the genius of geniuses, because your brain, it wasn't just right brain, left brain, as we say. It is, you were a genius. And okay, so that was my comment.
He says the other, I think what attracts people to my paintings, and even back then, people were very surprised by how I painted, was that you have to imagine that, before I started painting, paintings were not so much like photographs, but they were very stiff and very, they didn't even, they were almost unhuman. Mm-hmm. You could barely recognize the person that was in there because it didn't feel like a human being. And when I started to paint, I was obsessed with motion, because I noticed that everything has motion. Everything in nature is constantly moving. Even if we think that it is solid, I saw that it wasn't. Nothing was ever solid. And I wanted to paint in the same way. I wanted to show that motion and show that movement. And so the way that I painted was so very different, because I made photographs instead of paintings. Mm. And the way that I used the shadowing, a lot of, how would I explain this? And this might help people who are painters right now. A lot of painters, they will just literally just paint, the outlines and fill it up and try and create some shade here and there. The way that I painted, I didn't create shade. I didn't take gray and made it into shade. I actually took the same colors and I would layer it over and over and over and over and over until I had the shade that I wanted, but never using black or gray, always using the colors, but putting it on top of each other, layer and layer and layer. And that layering created depth. And that they hadn't seen before. That depth, you could literally see, for instance, the Mona Lisa, you could see the 3D.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's something that back in those days hadn't been done before. And I think that's what really surprised people and really attracted people to my paintings. I started a new way of painting. We came from a time frame where it was all about the abstract ideas. And then we went into what you guys call humanism now, which is, looking more, instead of looking at heaven and the gods and all of that, we went to, hey, let's look at humans. Let's look at the environment. And so we started to go into medicine, and we started to go into biology and all of that. And so times were changing at that moment. And my insights and my understanding of perception and and lighting, how the light would hit and make everything look completely different, how a shade can make everything look different. I incorporated that in my work, and that's why I think to this day people are amazed, because when you look at the Mona Lisa, she's really there. It's not just a picture.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. And that is very true. And that is, I mean, not too long before that, people were painting not in perspective. And I just can't imagine not even seeing that. So there's something to me that happened that everyone rocked along seeing things one way, and then it takes a couple of people like yourself, and it changes everything, absolutely everything. And I just think that is, when you really stop and think about that, it is pretty astounding what Emma's giggling. Are you ready for the next question?
He just keeps showing me, like the old paintings was like, that's what he's showing me. And then all of a sudden he says, I come in there and I go, relax, and I wanted my models to just be them and relax. And, and I loved music. I was really good at playing the violin. And I loved music, so I would always have people play while I was painting. And a lot of people think it was to relax the model, but it really was to relax me.
You know what? I suck at it. I really cannot paint, but that's why I like abstract, because you can just throw it up on the wall and it looks whatever. I used to put on tunes like Percy Sledge, just this like kind of bluesy, and I could paint all night long. I'd paint on my wall, and everybody get mad because my wall now had this big bright smear on it. But it was the process that I loved. And it was the music, the wine, and the painting. And something happens, in the middle of the night. It's just beautiful. Okay.
So that's how it was for me too.
See, is that
Food
connection?
Music. That's what kept me going.
Time just stood still. Okay, so Martina Crosland, did you think that your paintings are going to be so... Oh, well, I think you've already kind of answered that. Did you think they were going to be famous? And you said no, you just were not even... You were not... That didn't drive you at all.
It wouldn't even go inside my mind, because I never thought about future. I always thought about today.
I'm the same way. I cannot tell you, if you said what happened in 2008, I have no idea where. I mean, I know I had a son born, but it's like I have to attach it, I have to anchor it in time somehow, because it doesn't matter to me. And I have no idea how old I am. I have no idea. I bet you were the same way. Okay, so, here's a good one. Okay, so Melinda, her name is Regona, I'm sorry. Is he reincarnated in our time frame? And who are his favorite artists and inventors? And when will free energy technology be released to humanity to benefit our something and mankind? Those are three very different questions. So I want to tackle the first one. Are you here in our time frame now?
I'm not incarnated in this time frame at this moment. No.
Have you been since your life then?
I have different lifetimes as a human being. Very spread out. I have a few very interesting ones that you guys would call the future that are still coming. And because I actually love the time frame of what you guys call the cavemen.
Really?
It is, yes, it's a calm way of living. There are dangers, of course, to be dealt with, but you are fully present in the moment, and it's all about community. It's all about being one family. We do not yet, in that lifetime, we do not yet have the sensation or the feeling of individuality. We are a group, and we act and behave that way. And I love that. I love being part of a whole, not being part of the separate, because in the lifetimes that I did have as individuals, where I really have a very ego-driven, individualistic approach to life, I always found myself very unhappy. And so I really lean more towards the lives that are all about union and wholeness and togetherness and working together. That's why I have a lot of great lives that you guys would call the future, because that's where humanity is going towards.
Getting back
Still
together.
talking about several hundreds of years, but we will eventually reunite as the human race instead of the Americans, the Belgians, the French. All of that will eventually fade away.
Well, that's an interesting idea. And it is, so you wanted to try that. Oh, were you on any other planet? Hmm.
Oh, yes, I've been on a few hundred of different species.
So how many incarnations from your higher self are you in right now? An hour right now? I mean, whether it's varying planets or it's here, I mean, are you spread out?
How many incarnations at this
Hmm.
moment all over?
Yes.
He says, well, right now, if we talk in this second, because there's always creation happening, I have 1,352 lives.
Holy moly.
Mhm.
Wow. Huh.
Not all in form where you are an individual consciousness. I'm also talking about being grass. I'm also talking about being air,
Hmm.
uh, and being in different entities other than humanity, where a physical form is, for example, not necessary. So in all different shapes and forms.
Oh, that's a mind boggler, but that's beautiful. Okay, so do you know who were your favorite artists and inventors during the lifetime as Mr. Da Vinci? Or who are they now? Now that you can peer and see the pool from where you sit.
Well, I don't have favorites because let me explain. I believe that knowledge comes from source, so it all comes from within. And when I see people creating, I see source creating through them. So, who's the biggest creator that I enjoy? Source.
Source, that's beautiful. Okay, so that brings me to my next question. Mark Lambert wanted to know, were you Tesla?
No,
No. Okay. Do you know Tesla? Do you guys hang out on the other side?
I am aware of his existence. I have not yet reached out to him. No.
Got it. Not yet. It's been a couple hundred years. All right. So when I read that when I've read two different things about the end of that lifetime, that you died penniless, and then I also read that you died in the arms of the French president, that you were buddies with him, and you did not. You died actually well off.
I've always been poor. Let that be clear. I wish I had the millions that people pay for my paintings now. Financial, I was always a struggle because people, uh, as I said, my works were never finished. People always asked for their money back. And when I could not provide that for them, I would run, I would travel around and go to different places. That was my way of avoiding that.
Uh,
I was put in jail several times. I was locked up several times due to not providing the service that was required,
and for
um,
stealing
and and
cadavers.
accepting money. And yeah, okay, that one too. He says, but that's okay because I lived one day at a time. And jail for me was not really that big of a deal. Did I die in the arms of royalty? No, absolutely not. Did I die alone? No, I did not. One of my apprentices was with me when I transitioned. He had always been with me. He was very loyal to me. I had an interesting relationship with him. Um, he's showing me something. Sorry, I was distracted. Okay, so what he was showing me is that they kind of did have an intimate relationship,
Mhm.
but it wasn't really a relationship. It was almost like it was just a sporadic kind of thing. So, so no, he was not alone, and he had an apprentice who was next to him, holding his hand. Did he die penniless? Absolutely, he says. That was the
Well done.
story of his life.
Well done. Well, that's that would fit with you very much for that lifetime. It is because you see things so individually and you don't have a concept of time, and you don't, I could see where you would fall in love with the person. And I know relationships weren't really your thing, but
No.
that it's not male female, it's more the intellect, the mind, the curiosity. And I'm sure you were adored even then.
It was, yes, relationships were not so, they were just not, most people grow up with the imprint. You need to get married, you need to have children, you need to leave a legacy. I didn't have that because I didn't matter. And so relationships to me didn't really get my attention. I didn't have a concept much of relationship. For me, relationship was feeling comfortable with a person, and whoever that might have been at that time. I would sometimes have urges and impulses, and I would respond to that because I lived very much in that moment. But I never went into a physical relationship with somebody with the idea of, and we're going to be a
Right.
relationship now, and we're going to be
Too
a
confining.
this. No, that didn't even occur to me. It didn't even occur to me. And they were okay with that too. So I did have, romantic interactions with several men. They were okay with, they knew who I was and how I was, and they were fine with that. They were very open-minded. Nowadays people would condemn it. Back then it was pretty common that certain men would sleep around, and that was accepted. So yeah, it's my relationships were not what people would consider relationships.
You almost sound Asperger's. I mean, it's like it's a term that we, and I know I'm sure you know what that is, but it's a term like I find that when I meet people that are exceptionally brilliant, the relationship day to day stuff just kind of isn't their thing. They're not appropriate. They're not sometimes they say things, they do things. They don't really give a shit what people think because it never occurs to them that there is a societal norm, and or maybe another part of that is that their parts of their brains are so much more developed than the other parts. And so I just think it's a beautiful thing. There's just beauty in that, clearly.
Yes, that was, if the diagnosis would have been fallen, it would have gone to autism. Because the concept of relationships, I didn't understand people either. I didn't understand why they did certain things, but I really didn't care. There was no interest in understanding them. And also just the concept of money to me was, I just went day by day, and one day I could eat and the next day I couldn't, but I knew somehow money was going to come in and I'd be eating again. So, it's a different way of living, but there's freedom in that. And people nowadays will see people with autism or on the autism spectrum. There's so much labeling now. I don't
Yeah,
like
that's true.
that.
I agree.
I don't like the labelings. That's why I didn't bring up the name, but that's what you can compare it with. Um, people who live in their own world are a lot freer than people who don't, who are considered normal. So there's actually beauty to be found in a mind of an autistic person, in a mind where you create your own reality and you find ways to survive in your own way without being stuck with limitations and boundaries placed from other people upon you. So I thought it was a very fulfilling life. I thought it was very interesting, he says, because there was always creation and evolution. and that is very satisfactory. Now, at the end of my life, I did sometimes wonder whether or not I ever finished anything because I didn't remember. I had a stroke when I was around. He's given me between 60 and 70. I don't know how old that, but he's just giving me like in between there, and that kind of erased a lot of things out of my memory. But in the end, it didn't even matter whether I finished it or not, because as you can tell, people feel the energy that was put into it. Mm-hmm. And that is what art is. Art is not about what it looks like. It's about the energy of the painter that was put and placed upon it. Mm-hmm. And just like we get attracted to people, we believe that we are attracted to the way they look. And that is the illusion. We are never attracted to the way a person looks. We are always attracted to the way a person feels, to the energy that that person is emitting. And when it comes to art, it is the same way. It has nothing to do with what it looks like. It has to do with whether or not the energy of the painter speaks to you. That's what it's about.
That's, as you were saying that, that's beautiful. I saw what's his name? I can't say it. Basquiat, and in his, it was gritty and it was street art and you're right. It's not necessarily the art. It's the energy in the art. That's beautiful. I've never thought of it that way. So thank you for that. So how was your life review when you crossed?
He says very satisfactory. I was pleased with. He says, this might sound a little weird, but I was pleased with the ripple effect that I caused. Because when you get your life's review, you do not only get to see a rerun of your journey, but you also get to see the impact it has on the universe itself. And that was very satisfactory.
Oh, I bet it was. How could it not? We're talking to you today in 2018. Okay, so this is a good one. This is an interesting one, and I'm going to quote Christopher Wilson. What kind of awesome shit are you creating now? Look at what you can do with your hands. Holy shit. I imagine walking into a building you have created in heaven with your mind. Pretty sure our heads would explode. I love that, Christopher. That's awesome.
That's a great question, Christopher. Okay, well, he's saying, let me tell you a little bit. When I first crossed over, I instantly had instant manifestation, which is something that I never had before. It always took me years and years, and it still wasn't finished. So for the first time, or at least it felt like the first time, it wasn't the first time, but for the first time after you transition and you kind of have to get out of the human mind, I got to create everything that I wanted to create because I had so many ideas, but they were never realized. Although I tried really hard to get commission and fundings to create them, they were always turned down. So it was really fun to actually create something that did work and that,
it was completed.
What I do now is, I no longer, at this moment, in my spiritual form, I'm not creating. There's no need for it. But I am assisting young artists that are coming into this journey right now because, and not just artists, he says. I'm also assisting engineers, and I'm assisting musical talent. And, anybody who is working with the creative genius of source. And a lot of children nowadays are coming in with that direct connection. I am assisting. I am aiding them to stay true to who they are because they are being they see the talent. Parents will see the talent, and then they will be placed upon schools who will try and limit that talent, who will try and force it in directions that only minimizes the effect that their talent can have. And I am here to support and give these children the strength to tell those teachers, no, this is how I do it, and this is how it's going to stay. So they are the ones who will use creative thinking, who will use art, music to heal people.
Sorry, my killer Cujo's. Come here, Skittles, Skittles. It's fine, it's fine. Come here.
It's all right. It's pure. It's just Skittles. So yeah, that's what he's doing. So he's just showing me how he's feeding them with energy, and he's giving them thoughts and ideas and strength to stay true to who they are, because society will try and minimize and limit their creative mind so they can control it. And the new generation can no longer be controlled. That is why I'm here.
Well, and that what I see is that it what we do is we take kids and then we try to help them, but then really we're just trying to run it through us, not on purpose, but we're directing them instead of letting them direct it themselves, which is very hard as a mother to not do that.
Hard, he says, because really indirectly we are trying to force what we were taught, what we are learning, what we believe is right for them, upon them. But the only person who knows what is right for them is them, and we just need to have faith that even a small child knows exactly what and where it wants to go to.
So how do we as parents guide these children?
It's about open communication. It's about asking their opinion. It's about validating their opinion and finding a way to support their opinion that is in a safe way for them.
To not snuff it out. Okay, so to guide them, but give them more control.
Give them give them a chance to share and express their thoughts and feelings about where they want to go, what they want to do, how they experience things. And don't see, most people will, or most parents will say, oh, you're too young, you don't know that. And they will instantly crush people's dreams. They will instantly say, oh, I don't think you have the skills to do that, or that's not a good job. Maybe you should try something that's going to make more money. A lot of people limit their children. But when a child comes up and tells you, hey, I want to paint, I want to be creative, a lot of parents still try to push them in a direction that's going to provide an income.
Right.
Because they have the fear that being creative can't provide an income. It's a tricky thing. But if you induce your fear into that child, then that child will carry that fear with it. And it will never get to the point where it could have been, because it carried the fear for the rest of its life. So be very aware and become very aware of your own thoughts and feelings and how you address the child's dreams. Believe in them as much as they believe in themselves, and they will mount up to exactly what they told you they would do.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that is a huge difference I see from parenting even 20 years ago. It was more of a do as I say, not as I do. Children are to be seen and not heard. And we've shifted, a lot of folks that I know have shifted into we're not equal, but we are. We're just further along on the path. And I love seeing that. That seems to be moving in that direction.
He says adults have more experience in the human existence, but children have more experience in connecting to source.
I'm sorry about that. Skittles, come here, girl. There's some people doing some work in the back. Okay, so I think we have time for one more. How do you feel?
Yeah.
Okay, Fraser Tuohy, McCall. How did he do such advanced engineering type stuff? And can anyone become a good enough painter, sketcher, artist to create images they are interested in? Basically, I would like to be able to do both of these things. I'm going to study in engineering at university, and I would love to be able to make sketches, paintings, images, etc. But I'm terrible at drawing stuff. Boom. All right, Shara.
He's saying, first of all, know and understand that we can do anything we put our minds to, but you need to let go of the limitation that your drawings need to look like mine. Drawings will come from your perspective and will come from your energy, and they will provide you with the engineering skills that you want to have. But it's all about comparing. You're comparing constantly how it should look like, what a drawing should look like, how precise it should be. But a drawing just needs to come from your mind and your heart. And when that happens, the message will be passed on to whoever you are trying to make it for. So create your own art, be your own self, combine both, and have fun with it. Stop being so self-critical and just enjoy what you do. Every time we enjoy what we do, we will exceed our own expectations. And so you can do this as well, he says.
The true artists, or I mean, in any realm, they are their own. I mean, they dare to, chart their own course, and so you don't want to be like anyone else.
He says, dare to be different, dare to be you. The biggest challenge that humanity is facing right now is they're being faced with two choices. Do I become like everyone else, or do I dare to become me? Exactly. That is the biggest question right now. And, he's saying we're all here to learn. We're all here to experience, to assimilate and create through observation of the relationships around us, whether that is a human relationship, whether that is the relationship with our environment, whether that is the relationship with ourselves. And we're all here to observe. We're all very keen observers, but we need to find the strength and the bravery inside of us to be honest of our observation. And then what we'll do is we'll start to compare all that knowledge and all that gained wisdom to how it applies to the universe as a whole. That is the next step into the human evolution. Now we're just observing, and we're starting for the first time allowing ourselves to observe ourselves for who we are, not for who we were shaped to be. Not to let go of the observation of who we were molded to be. Mm-hmm. So, and the next step in evolution will be, once we discover who we are, once we find our true self, we will then find understanding and knowledge in how us, our little individual character, our little individual person, relates and fits perfectly into everything that is. How our little life is affecting the entire universe.
Amen. Mic drop. I believe that completely. You came to sing a note. And it's part of the collective, and the collective is much bigger than we even realize. So one last question. Mm-hmm. Are there any other pieces of your work out there that we don't know about, that have not been discovered, like sitting in a garage at a garage sale for $5? Because I'm curious, because I want to go find it. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, there are a few pieces of, there's a few paintings and a few sculptures that were stored away during World War II. Mm-hmm. They were put into crates and they were buried out of fear that German soldiers would come and claim them. These have still not been recovered, but they will be recovered over time. They will be very interesting for people to observe. Some I'm really, they will be discovered. Unfortunately, a lot of the work that or some of the works that I have done, he says, were destroyed. Some of them were burnt. And some of them really just faded. See, I didn't always use, I had a tendency of using oil in my paint, which was pretty unique back then. But I didn't always keep in mind that certain surfaces would get wet, would get moisty, and that would completely destroy the painting. So some paintings just faded over time due to weather elements. But, some works will still pop up. And I think you guys will be pleasantly surprised when that happens, he says. He says, I know there's a lady out there who wants to know what my relationship was with Michelangelo. He said, okay, I wasn't a big fan of it. And this is the weird part, he says, because for a very long time, I really didn't have any interest into what people thought, what their interests were, and so on and so forth. But as I got older, he kind of took my place, and he was adored, and that made me jealous. That made me jealous, he said. So I was not fond of him, not because of his work, because I thought his work was incredible, but I would never say that, but because I felt like he took my spot.
No.
So, and I know that's weird, he says, but I was in a moment in my life, I was getting older, and you get to a point in your life where you have created so much, but in my time frame, it wasn't appreciated or it wasn't adored. And when he showed up, people adored his work because he actually finished his work. So for me, that was, it did pinch a little that he was so praised, and that, he had the ability to finish and I didn't. So it kind of, his perfectionism, because he was perfectionistic in every way, revealed the imperfections that I had. And that was not a nice feeling. So I tried to avoid him, or I tried to discredit him.
You ever meet him?
Did I ever beat him? No.
No, meet him. Meet him,
yes. We are good friends. Now. No, we understood that we were here to push each other's buttons, because we did meet in person several times, and I would always give him a kind of a nasty comment, and he would give me a nasty comment back. So it really was not a good relationship, but those nasty comments pushed us to do better and to do even bigger things than we thought we would do. So.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's really interesting. So the Vitruvian Man, was that you? I mean,
yes,
that was you. Like, that's what you look like.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I know. I'm always really intrigued by my foot is the same size as this, and this is the same size as this, and I love that stuff too. Well, is there anything else?
I was obsessed. Nature is perfect. Mm-hmm. Perfect in every way, and there's symmetry, there is mathematics in it. Nature does not make mistakes. For instance, just to give you an insight, when I looked at the hand, and you have all the little bones in there, one bone, and then the next bone was exactly half the length of that first bone. And then the bone after that was exactly half of the bone that was in front. Exactly. Okay? There was no mistake. The universe doesn't make mistakes. The body is perfect. It is perfection. It is a perfect machine that allows us to roam this physical world And we just don't see it. We don't see just how perfect we really are. But look at all the bones. You will see that everything is exactly half of the other thing. And this is double. It's perfection.
Mathematically.
Mathematics to perfection. And everything goes in circles, he says. Everything is in waves. And all you need to do, people, is look at what is in your garden, what is outside. Look at your own body. You're living in a perfect world. And we choose to only see the imperfect emotions that are created out of the illusions of others. Choose to see the perfection and choose to see the beauty that you are surrounded with. And you will see that there is perfection in everything that we do as well. No matter how heart-wrenching it is, no matter how much it hurts to see people suffering, there is even perfection in the suffering because we learn and grow from it, and it expands into an energetic wave that creates compassion over the world. Perfection, he says.
It's beautiful. Thank you for that. Wow.
You're welcome.
I felt like that when I had my baby or my babies. It was like your body. I didn't tell my body to do what it did. My body just did it. What did you do today? I grew a thumb. I mean, it just did it. And then when it was time to have the babies, it just does it. I mean, how cool is that?
That's very interesting. He says, this is something that maybe most people might not know. I was a vegetarian too.
No.
I did not approve of taking a life for food consumption or for war. Now, let me explain something really quick, he says. I know a lot of people have seen the tanks and kind of the war.
The bridge.
Inventions that I made. And I'm telling everyone that, I respect life and I don't want to take life. And it wouldn't be clear to people to why I would make tools of war. He's saying, okay, so this is why. He's saying, I understood the psychology of warfare. He's saying the weapons that I designed were made for intimidation and for fear tactics, meaning that, if the enemy, it's about scaring your enemy away, therefore saving lots of lives in the process. So it was more of a scare tactic than, can you imagine back in the day, if they would have made my tank, just one shot off of that cannon, the rest really didn't have to work. Just one shot of that cannon and just the intimidation effect, everybody would run and flee, because how do you fight that with your sword? It would cause people to flee, to run for their lives. And that right there causes victory without the casualties that I used to see. So that is why I tried to invent war tools, not to kill, but to save people's lives.
I love that. I mean, that makes sense.
There you go.
I love the bridge, though.
Drop the mic.
We're done. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Da Vinci, Maestro.
He's saying thank you for giving me a chance to speak.
Ah, that's lovely. That's lovely. Well, look forward to talking with you again.
He's saying, oh, we will.
Good. Good. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you want to sign us off?
Yeah, thanks, guys, for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.